Yeah, I get right to the racks. Then I make that shit back. Run up on me, get shot in the back.
JTV in the building. If you're here, subscribe to the channel, man. You're going to ranking. Damn, reacts. Today we got Brixton versus Peckham, most infamous beef in London.
Yeah. You said we play. So the way this network works is you subscribe to the channel
First.
and then you request the content,
Okay.
and then we will react to it accordingly.
That's how it goes, man. This is a long video. I want to get right to it. But if you're new to the channel, you subscribe, request, and react like he said.
Yeah.
Follow us on Instagram at JTV and at Pops Reacts.
Pops React. I go live every day. Last night I
Good.
wrestled a lion.
On live. Go check him out.
One-on-one with a lion.
Link in the description. Follow him at JTV at Pops Reacts.
Cut me up a little bit.
Let's hop right to it. Shout out Kid Nerd. We got another one of these docs, man. We're on the doc with you. Let's look at some other docs you want to see.
Let's
You
go.
sharing TV. Let's get right to it. You know where Brixton and Peckham are? Hurry up. What part of London? North, west, south? South London, man. Come on.
I don't want to say it, I'm wrong.
What's up guys, it's your boy Kid Nerd here back with another video. And we're going old school today. And talking about one of the most infamous beefs in London. And one of the first publicised
Taking it
beefs in
back.
London as well. I'm talking about the Brixton versus Peckham beef in the late 2000s to early 2010s. The publicised drill feuds in South London, like Moscow versus Zone 2 and Harlem versus 410. There was a very deadly war going on between Peckham and Brixton, which is one of the first nationally publicised beefs in London, gaining a lot of news coverage and came about in the early stages of YouTube, where we could see direct disses, kind of originating diss tracks how we know it today. So as I said before, the two areas in this feud were Brixton versus Peckham. So first we have Peckham, which is located in the borough of Southwark in South London, which infamously is the area where drill group Zone 2 are from. But before Zone 2, there was the Peckham Boys, which is a gang made up of 5 estates in Peckham, which were the North Peckham Estate, Gloucester Grove Estate, Willowbrook Estate, Camden Estate, and the Sumner Estate. And these estates were very well known for how bad they were. They suffered massive unemployment and crime, and were very deprived. They pretty much were neglected by any law enforcement and government as well, and was even called Peckham, which is a hybrid between Vietnam and Peckham, comparing the area to the Vietnam War due to how much violence was there. Throughout the Peckham Boys gang, there were different sects, like the Firehouse Crew and YBP, or Younger Peckham Boys. There were also a couple of Jamaican yardie gangs in Peckham, like the Sunrise Crew and the Spangers. And on the other side of the feud, we have Brixton, which is about an 11-minute ride from Peckham, and is located in the borough of Lambeth. Brixton's main gang in this feud was called the Gas Gang, who was a gang from the Angel Town estate. And these guys were the most violent gang in the Brixton area, and were even responsible for 3/4 of violent incidents in Brixton in 2012. The Angel Town estate, where Gas Gang is from, probably has the richest history of gangs in London, with many different generational gangs being bred from this estate, like the PDC gang in the 2000s who dominated the estate. Nowadays it's the Get Back gang or 150 who take on the estate. But let's take it back
That's
a minute.
M24's cool. Get back gang.
We'll get back in.
From Brixton. Alright, interesting.
To 2008, where Peckham, who I first mentioned, was deep in a decades long with a gang called the Ghetto Boys, who was a gang from Lewisham in South London, which was a crazy war in itself, and I'll definitely do a video of that in the future. But in 2008, after decades of back and forth between the Peckham and Lewisham gangs, younger generations in both gangs agreed to an alliance, which was fully solidified during the Notting Hill Carnival in August 2008, when 180 members from both gangs organised a link-up at the carnival. The link-up was actually intercepted by police, because the police thought the two gangs were linking up to fight each other. But as Peckham's relationship with Lewisham got better, their relationship with Brixton started to worsen. See, historically, Brixton and Peckham have always had a feud, even dating all the way back to the 1950s, where local schoolboys from both areas would clash, which is even more hostile after immigration, because Peckham was filled with mainly African immigrants, while Brixton was filled with mainly Caribbean immigrants. So there's always been big culture clashes there. But as I said, in 2008, the war between Brixton and Peckham was starting to become a lot more heated. And these were times where guns were
Shout out to Kid Nerd.
He breaking it.
Yeah, you're breaking it down to its very last comment.
Nah, this is fire. I like this. I like my history, man. Wow.
much more accessible than what they are now. It wasn't uncommon for a gang member to be rolling around with a gun, just like how nowadays most gang members roll around with knives. So there was a lot of back and forth shooting between these areas. In one instance, members from a Brixton gang called OC, who were heavily allied with Gas Gang, rid out on Woolworth Road, which at the time was a territory of the Shoot Instant gang, who were part of the Peckham side, and started shooting at two Peckham rappers called Snap Capone and Butch, who were walking down the street. Both actually managed to run to it.
It's kind of interesting because we reacted to Snap Capone,
yeah,
and people have been asking, so we got to do a little bit more.
There's a lot of artists out of South London. I know that.
Yeah.
Convenience store. I managed to dodge the bullet. While running into the shop, an innocent bystander just trying to get into the same shop was shot and killed. His name was Ryan Bravo, and he was 18 at the time. And this was one of the big turning points in making his feud widely publicised in the UK. Just to rub salt in the wounds, the OC gang made a diss track called Bullet Rhythm, when a member mocked the situation with the lyrics, "Had you running in the shop like you're buying something?" While a member of a Peckham gang then responded to the situation in a song called Real Riders, saying, obviously referencing when Brixton members shot up Woolwich Road, which is some of the early examples of UK diss songs, referencing real moments that have happened on the streets, bringing more publicity to the feud. And the people who are up to date with London's street situation at the moment will probably be quite confused, because Woolwich Road actually beats Peckham now, but that's a whole nother story to get into another time. So yeah, after this Woolwich Road shooting, many diss tracks were going back and forth between the gangs, as well as shots. In the same year of 2008 in October, Brixton older members got the drop on a Peckham member's house called Terms, and waited in a parked car outside his house. When Terms appeared outside his house, they shot him on his doorstep, leaving him to die. Terms is a member of the SN1 gang in Peckham, which stands for Spare No One. And this is the same gang that the famous rapper Giggs was part of, and Giggs pays respect to Terms sometimes in his songs. It didn't take more than a month for Peckham to respond to
Damn, I'm telling you, sounds like a lot of rappers, dude.
That's crazy. That's deep. Shout out to Giggs.
Right, that's crazy.
So, in November, Peckham members got the drop that some members from the Brixton gang OC were clubbing at a nightclub called SE1 in Bermondsey, South London, and pulled up to the club, shooting Errol Davis close range in front of 2,500 clubbers, which is even crazier because the murderer was never caught, despite there being thousands of witnesses at the scene. But these times, stuff like this wasn't uncommon, because there was low-level security and no cameras in some of the clubs in 2008, which is something you will never see in clubs in London nowadays. Quite recently, actually, in 2016, the police found the same handgun which murdered Errol Davis at the nightclub in the possession of a man called Andre Chambers, who lived in Woolwich, which is quite sus. It was also later found out that the same weapon which was involved in Errol Davis' murder was also involved in 2 other attempted murders and 1 murder. But Andre Chambers was never found guilty for the murders with little to no evidence, apart from handling the weapon. But that's not enough to go down for a murder. But this time,
in the United States it is.
Yeah, you're...
That's one thing that's different. In the US, you got a gun and they got a murder linked to it, and you got it. Guess what? You did it.
Word. That's crazy.
Wow. There were also a lot of separate gangs and areas who joined alliances with both areas. This was basically turned into some World War III stuff, the South London version. One set based in Old Kent Road called OBY in South London were affiliated with Peckham, but a dispute between the members started a feud between OBY and Peckham, resulting in OBY members joining Brixton in the fight against Peckham, which was fully signified in the track between the 2 gangs called Brooklyn to Baghdad. But OBY went off to a bad start in this feud after losing one of their younger members called Baby Ryder. His real name was Sunday Essia, and he was a 15-year-old orphan from Nigeria after his mum and dad both died when he was younger, and he started to get involved in the South London feud. Before he was stabbed, he pulled out an imitation firearm on 4 rival members. When they realised it was fake, they chased him through a park while he was screaming for his life, begging his killers not to kill him and spare his life. But he was ultimately stabbed 9 times and left to die. So after the back and forth in 2008, Brixton and Peckham was literally a no-go zone. And me personally, growing up as a kid around these times, despite me not actually living in the area and being too young to understand all this stuff, I just knew.
You said in another video we covered with Canary that he's definitely...
He gotta be from there. He cut from that cloth.
Word.
Like he from that area. He know everything. He know everything. He know everything.
He know everything.
He know everything.
Word.
Peckham was a place you did not go. Even the Member of Parliament of Peckham at the time, Harriet Harman, would wear a bulletproof vest and have security while she walked through Peckham, further embracing the name Pecknam. Then 2009 hit, and this was a big year for music from both sides, but especially from the Peckham side of things, when Giggs dropped a couple mixtapes and started putting some of his other members onto music, like Gunna D and Killer Kai. But Giggs was under a lot of pressure from the police at the time, who would cancel his shows, warn labels not to work with him, and even ban him from appearing in TV and radio, which is something we see a lot now with police taking down these drill music videos. Well, the reason why police were so onto Giggs is because the streets were crazy at these times, and Giggs' Peckham gang, SN1, were making headlines early on in 2009 when they executed the ex-member in full daylight on the busy street because he fell out with the gang earlier on. This was a ticking point for police because it was seeming to the public at this time that the gangs had took control and could do whatever they want, which was essentially true. So police started gathering CCTV footage of previous write-ups from both Peckham and Brixton gangs in an attempt to take down some members. Police sent over this footage to Peckham members' lawyers as proof of their involvement in the feud, which a member then grabbed the footage of his lawyer and uploaded it to YouTube. The original video is no longer up, but a re-upload of it is still on YouTube today, and shows Peckham members riding out in Brixton in masses. And when looking at this footage, this is some propaganda-worthy stuff. Like, the captions on the videos are so funny, and all the footages just show how crazy these times really were. Like, gangs were just riding their ops with 30 guys on pedal bikes, loaded with guns and knives. There's no way you could get away with that.
You by yourself, you go to the corner store real real quick, and you see 30 of your ops on bikes coming down your way.
Coming to get you.
Whew, that's crazy.
Nowadays in London, 3 boys can't even walk to the shop in London without getting stopped by police, let alone that many people on bikes. Brixton gangs responded to this YouTube video in the music video called Your Liars, and the whole year of 2009 was literally just filled with violence and diss tracks, with some real classics like Wreckage from Peckham younger members. Around the same time of this release, a 13-year-old boy was stabbed 5 times in South London due to the feud between these areas, which hit national attention because 13 is hella young, and I think this rang into a lot of people's mind that this issue was very bad, because kids as young and even younger than 30 were now known to be involved in this. And on top of all this Brixton and Peckham beef, Peckham were having their own issues inside the area, and the civil war started to ignite in the Peckham area, which was fully all out after a member of the MLB gang of Madam on Brandon was shot dead by Peckham olders. MLB is a gang from the Brandon estate in South London, which is the same estate drill group Moscow 17 is based in. Peckham rapper Snap Capone was linked to the murder, but managed to beat the case. But a member was sent to prison for hiding a gun used in the murder. This created a lot of...
He should have never said that. He should have never said that.
The way he's saying all that's public record.
Oh, okay, that is true. He does say it. All right.
Politics between Peckham and the Peckham affiliated gangs, and eventually after many disputes, members of an estate called Lexham Estate split away from the Peckham sets and started beefing Peckham, which just started turning Peckham very messy. At the same time, different Peckham sets started turning on each other, and because Peckham is such a big area and had so many different estates, the gangs just started keeping inside their estate. One of these being the Pelican Estate, which started beefing other Peckham gangs after the disagreement, which in December of 2010 resulted in 2 members being stabbed and 1 being shot to death. The member who died was called Vesta, and police were investigating the situation heavily at the time. So while this investigation was taking place, a younger member of a rival Peckham gang started to go onto the Pelican Estate and post leaflets through the doors, which said, and I quote, "Stop snitching or we'll come for you," which must have been hella threatening for the normal residents who just live on the estate and had nothing to do with the gang situation. 2 members, Tiny Nutty and Jungle, were convicted and sent to a minimum of 30 years for the murder, just before Tiny Nutty got booked for the murder of Esther. His older, who was called Nutty, was on remand in prison for a firearm charge. Around these times especially, it would be common for older members to have youngers, which would then take on their name essentially, just like how Tiny Nutty took on Nutty's name. A 17-year-old from Peckham was also one of the...
That's interesting. So they'll take like the younger members will take on the older members' name, especially like I guess if they're deceased or go to jail.
Yeah, I heard about that in Cali too. I think they do like something like Tiny something like that.
Oh, where?
Yeah, it's a thing.
Same charge as
Nutty had it in London.
But just like how gang hierarchy works, other members were pressuring the 17-year-old to plead guilty to the firearm charge, which would then allow Nutty to be freed. The 17-year-old refused though, which resulted in other members executing the 17-year-old by throwing him into a car and shooting him in the back of his head, and then burning the vehicle on the day of the court hearing. Nutty was accused of arranging the murder because of the conflicting stories they both were telling in court, and he looked even more guilty after officers found the lyrics in his cell saying, "Kill your co-defendant if you're snitching in court." Like, I don't think you could get any more bait than writing those lyrics. Like it's a catchy
like what?
No fucking. Sorry, man. Why would you do that?
Yeah, he's an idiot.
I don't think he did it. I think the cops planted it.
Plan or anything. I think he was just screaming, "Please lock me up." And that's exactly what they done after finding him guilty of the gun charges and arranging the murder, which he is now serving 32 years for. Also, the Peckham rapper, who is known by a street name CS, was actually caught and convicted for setting the
CS. We reacted to, remember? CS?
No, I would have remembered that nose. I would have remembered that nose.
You don't remember CS? Come on.
Also, the Peckham rapper, who is known by a street name CS, was actually caught and convicted for setting the car on fire after the 17-year-old was shot and killed, which he served 4 years for. So as you can tell, Peckham was just a mad area at these times. The civil war they were having was probably more active than their beef with Brixton ever was. One death that really shocked the area was the death of a respected member called Taz. He died during a chase when he crashed his motorbike. Family members put up a shrine on Taz where the accident occurred, where the ops then camped outside the same day of his death. And when a member called Little Crew visited the shrine, they shot him dead the same day. So Peckham was literally a no-go zone at this point. Like literally everyone was just beefing each other. And while all this madness was happening in Peckham, Brixton were having their own set.
I always hear about this
madness.
Yeah, I always hear about these 2 parts of London. Like who was here? I heard the
madness. This is crazy beef.
This is wild. South London beef.
Brixton, Peckham.
For issues over in their camp. Gas Gang was starting to get heavily involved in beefs with a lot of surrounding towns, like Brixton Hill and Toast Hill, which are blocks of the famous drill groups 6-7 and 8-6. One murder that really started changing the dynamic of this beef was the murder of Toast Hill member Little Zach. It was 2011 and 5 Gas Gang members rid out in a school located in Toast Hill, waiting for Little Zach to come home from school. The reason the members targeted Little Zach is because he was involved in the stabbing of a Gas Gang member 2 weeks before this incident. When he came out of the school, the Gas Gang members chased Little Zach and stabbed him to death. He was only 15 at the time, and this resulted in a few separate gangs starting to turn on gas.
So many lives,
8
yo,
p.m.
yeah.
He was a gang located in
It's
Stockholm.
painful. It's painful, bro. It's painful. So many lives cut short on both ends.
Yeah, like even if you do the crime, you're still going to jail for 30 years. Like,
This is, I don't know, man. This is painful.
Word.
Let it rock.
At this point, literally everyone was beefing everyone. South London was just a very, very dangerous place. And when some murders would be committed, police couldn't even point it towards any specific gangs, just because it could have been so many different cliques. Like the murder of Azur Khan in 2011. He was attending the funeral of one of his gas gang friends when he was shot and killed at the burial. But no one has the faintest idea of who it could have been. It could have been one of the many gangs in Peckham, it could have been members from Tulse Hill, Brixton Hill, ABM, or just anyone from the borough of Southwark. There's just too many possibilities. These murders amped up the fuse between gas gangs and other areas aside Peckham, and it was getting to the point where both Brixton and Peckham had more issues on their hands rather than each other. In 2012,
oh wow! So it just turned into like they were beefing, and then it turned into like little civil wars inside. That's crazy to think about.
Jockeying for that power.
Gang members rid out on Stockwell looking for members of a rival gang called ABM. When they found the op inside the shop, they let off fire inside the shop, which missed the rival, but ended up hitting a 5-year-old, which left her paralyzed. This hit nationwide news, and this was really the beginning of the end for Gas Gang, because they started getting more monitored than probably any other gang at the time, which 2 years later resulted in a massive raid taking down some of the key members of the gang. Nowadays, Peckham and Brixton gangs are actually linked up, with both of them having the same ops, but compared to how it was back in 2011,
You see how life works? That's crazy.
They went full circle. Now they're frenemies.
Yeah, like their little brothers and little cousins. Cool.
Both areas have calmed down a lot, with mass surveillance and of course gentrification. If you go to some of the old blocks of Peckham, where murders, robbings and shootings would be a daily occurrence, it's crazy how now them same blocks are filled with white hippies with rich parents. But to be honest, that's like most of London now. Anyway guys, that's it for today's video. I might do a part 2 on this because I know there's some things that I left out. But either way, it's been your boy Kid Nerd and peace out.
Wow, that was only like 10 years ago though. That all that happened. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Damn, man. Let's look at some other videos we see like this.
Shout out to you guys out there who tuning in.
Word. Brixton versus Peckham, infamous beef. This is interesting. I love this history about London. We're learning more and more, right? Every time.
Every day, it all connects.
Word. It's Sharing TV. If you have a subscribe channel, we out of here.
Hey, hit the block, catches that slipping, we spinning in that drop. Bullets Tyson biting, fuck, I look like I ain't got a box. Ain't sparing no nigga, he try me and I'ma pop his top.